Welcome to episode 20 of Attitude Makeover. My guest today is retired Group Captain Ritu Raj Tyagi, a fighter pilot from the Indian Air Force with over 4,000 flying hours, who went on to become a light combat aircraft test pilot and now currently works as the marketing director at SAB India Technologies. In my conversation today with Ritu, we dwell into his time serving the nation in the armed forces, his learnings and his invaluable life experiences that he picked up during his tenure in the Indian Air Force, and also the challenges and the new way of looking at restarting career post the Indian Air Force service. With a career spanning over 3 decades in the Indian Air Force, this conversation is filled with fascinating anecdotes and experiences and incidents that highlight the importance of having a purpose, culture building, and a sense of community built via lived experiences. He brings a holistic perspective into the conversation of defining values and risk evaluation, along with anecdotes around his LCA test pilot journey. For an excellent takeaway on individual worth, changing careers, and also a deep dive into how one looks at money and our relationship with money, tune into this episode. As always, I hope you like it.
So, wisdom is what I call the greatest enemy of doing right things.
But then, again, if you go back to the armed forces days, there's logical thinking. Wisdom is about how you think and how you assess and all of that, right? There's logical thinking around it. And so there is right, there is a correct way, and there is the right thing to do, what you think you should be doing. Is there conflicts that happen during that? And do you then sort of, voice it? Do you have the space and the culture to voice it and speak about it and say, no, this is not right, and debate about it?
You see, armed forces, if you look at the procedures and the ways laid down, there's a way of dissenting, right? There's a way of disagreeing, right? And there's a way of projecting that dissent above you also, right? It's seldom excised because they think that it's very, very regimental or hierarchy based, right? And you need to obey. And the best part about the armed forces is that somebody who's telling you to do something has been in your shoes, right? There's no one who has come above you who has not been through what you have been. Yeah. To become a general, you have to be a lieutenant. To become an air marshal, you have to be a flying officer, right? And he has done everything in that. So most of the time, even if you have a conflict, you feel that, yes, this old man is right? Because he knows the best, whatever is there. And you tend to believe in him because that's the ethos or the whole thing, the way the armed forces stand for, right? To live by the word, right? Or die by it, right? So that way, but yes, there are times when you have conflict, where your basic value system, you may feel that is at variance, or so there are ways and means laid down for you to protest, right, or to subject your dissent. You can always raise the matter, right, and that is also true that the way it goes up and you are not sure what will be the outcome. So it's rarely excised in extreme cases, and in my cases it happened once with me, and I did that, and fortunately my voice was heard. Right, and there's one beautiful part of it, that if I have to say anything against my immediate boss, it has to go through him, right? I have to address him that this is what I want to say, and he has to forward it, and he has no option. He can write whatever he wants. He has no option to keep it with himself. He has to forward it, right? So that's a beautiful part of armed forces. It's used very sparingly because they are moments of like this or less, right? And when it's used, I think people give, at least in my case, I was a very critical juncture in my career when this happened to me, and I voiced my opinion, and I voiced my opinion very in writing, not verbally, and it took some time for people to address that, but ultimately I got in writing from the headquarters saying that we it has been looked into, and we find that so and so thing is right, or that has been expunged or whatever, you know. So that way, I think it's a beautiful system, right? Right people should use it in the right way, right? And it shouldn't be to sort out your personal grievances, right? You should be very objective about what you're talking about, right? There was no, in my representation, there was nothing against the individual. I just quoted that this is what happened, right? And this is, you would decide whether you agree with this or you agree with this as a system, right? What we stand for. So that way, and I would say fortunate, or maybe the way I put it across, it was that my voice was listened and I was given that redressal. So yeah, that way it's hierarchical. It's difficult to do this, but ways, means, procedures are so good in armed forces to project yourself, and it will be heard. It may be dismissed, right? But you will be heard. There's no doubt.
I want to start off with when you talked about the 20-year-old, you going into the training center. Before that, were you always like, my schoolmates, there were a couple of them who are right now in the army still serving, and they always used to say, I want to be in the armed forces. And it was like that clear for them in terms of, alignment. But were you always that way growing up, or how was it?
No, armed forces were not part of this thing. And honestly, if you ask me, yes, I, like they say, like everyone when we are kids, all of us, without saying, somewhere or the other, when we see an aeroplane, we want to become a pilot, right? Yes. And some don't grow up, they also say that. They actually go and become pilots. So the point is that when I was in graduation, there was a movie called Vijeta, which came, right? And saw that movie, I don't know, just before that or during that time. And
Sunny Deol?
No. That was Shashi Kapoor's son. His name in the movie was Angad. I forget his real name. And this was on Air Force, right? And I thought in Air Force, when you go, you only become fighter pilot, right? There's no other branch in Air Force, right? And when I filled up the form also for Command Defense Services Migration, I thought this FP stands for fighter pilot. Actually, it's for flying pilot, right? So this fascination was there when you look at aircraft flying past in this. And my mom says when I was young, my grandmother used to say, this boy is made for, armed forces or military service. They call it military. Military mein jaane ke layak hai ye. So that when I was young, but I don't know that. But yes, definitely I wanted the aircraft was a fascination for me. And it was not that was a fascination from my childhood, but I thought that, this is something which is really nice to do. But it was something of a dream. I never thought it can happen or will happen. And I joined Air Force primarily, if it was more of earning a living also, being from a middle class family. To have a job was very important for me. And it was kind of job and a good job. And of course, when the flying kicked in, I realized there is something in this world which I can do reasonably well. Right? Before that, whether studies or whatever, it was always I was struggling with everything, or it was not my cup of tea, whichever way you want to put it across. And when I started flying, barring the initial stages where I had hiccups, I realized that there is something which I enjoy doing, and there is something which I can do reasonably well. And it gives me a sense of what you can say. It's like this in a single aircraft, one man, one cockpit, one aircraft, right? And aircraft doesn't judge you, right? You got to it's in your hands. Like Richard Bach said, that if you want your destiny to be totally in your hands, chances are that you are a born pilot. Right? Wow. Right? So it's like having your destiny in your hands, your life or whatever in your hands. And the way you transact with the outside world is through radio, right? You transmit, you receive, you say something and someone gives you direction. There is no money, there is nothing, nobody reads your expression, right? Of course, they can judge with the tone of your voice whether you're frightened or excited or kind of situation it is. That's true. Like when you're reporting enemy is closing onto some of your body, then that voice conveys the urgency of the situation. That's different story. But those kind of transaction and being so one man, one cockpit, one aircraft, same aircraft, everyone flies flies differently, and your own life doesn't depend it's not in your hands. It's on somebody who can look after you. You can see whether somebody is coming for you or not. So yeah, that's something which is which is very, very unique to being in a group with other people and being single in a manner, right? And so that way, it was like I won't say that I joined Air Force for serving the country or serving this. Yes, that thing of serving the country, doing the thing comes with the training, with comradeship which you have, the kind of senior officers, the way they guide you, the way they teach you. There's a big contribution of all those from my first commanding officer to the last boss which I had here in National Flight Test Center. They have taught so much. About this. So those things come. But initially, I think most of us join. It's an exciting career. It's a decent way of earning a living, right? And yes, it turns out
very flamboyant for an extern, for a civilian.
Yeah.
I think I was always in awe of
Yeah.
pilots, right? So I think, there's a lot of glamour associated thanks to our movies and our books and
Yeah, probably. Yeah, true.
Right?
Maybe.
So, we were talking about this when we started. In your TED talk, you were talking about the dharma part, and I feel every organization has a mission statement. Like if you look at Microsoft, for example, it's about empower every individual and organization to achieve more.
Yeah.
I think it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And at some point when you're joining the organization, you sort of align your dharma or your purpose with the larger purpose the company has, and that's where it starts.
True, yeah.
So, but the army does it really beautifully. I mean, the armed forces really do it very well, which is like to provide safety and unity for the country. Right? And you wrote it in one of your journals as well. The first dharma of a soldier is to win for the country.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, when you join the armed forces, there's this instilled purpose that aligns your purpose with the purpose of the armed forces itself. How does that happen? Because you didn't come from that purposeful state, right? How did that happen for you?
You see, like first instant what I talked about, that aircraft crashed during our academy when I was a young cadet. Flying didn't stop. I was supposed to go solo. One of the instructor came, sat with me, and we both taxied out with the aircraft. That smoke and mushroom still burning. We taxied out, right? And that's a lesson at a very young stage. And the what do you call the top line of Air Force, which I read in some ways that, if I remember correctly, it's people first, mission always. Right? We put people first, but mission always. Right? So accomplishing that mission, right, is primary thing.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing is that people lead you by example. Right? You seen people above you doing that. Right? People doing left and right doing that. So there is no way of you firstly not learning that, right? You learn that, right? And so there is no way to in that training, the way the training is done, the way you go as a young officer to a squadron, the way you are trained, the way you fly, right? The way you do things. Like for example, I remember I was in a ground attack squadron where its primary task is to attack ground targets in Jaguar. And there was a senior of mine who was teaching me how to do things. We were having what's called dual check, where they teach you. And I rolled into a dive to fire a bomb, and I said, "Sir, this is not working out. I'll come in another," because he took over controls, and he said some choices of word, and he rolled it. And I said, "Now do it." Right? So I did it. So in the sense, and then he came back. He said that's what we call the first run attack. First time. He said, "You cannot. It cannot be. It's not possible that you don't fire your weapon in the first run attack, because that's the only run you may have."
Wow.
Right? So that's so that's the kind of thing which is ingrained in you, not by telling you, but by walking the talk. And the organizations, which recruit within, right? Like armed forces, for example, universities, right? They recruit within. You cannot become, a tenured professor or whatever it is in once you join, right? You may own the university, but you cannot become a professor. Similarly, institutions like church, right? They recruit within. They are the most robust organizations in the thing and people walk the talk.
Yeah. There's always a conflict if I were to draw an analogy to my world, which is the tech world that I come from. There's always a conflict of, do I hire from outside? Do I keep my internal and create growth? And part of the conversation today, Raj, was also to sort of get into the comparison of sorts to see what is the right culture. Because clearly the army, when you start off with a mission to every soldier, every individual in the organization, I keep saying army, the armed forces, irrespective of whether it's the Army, Navy, or the Air Force, every soldier is aligned with that mission. And there's a culture which is like the safety. Every individual feels I'm taken care of, and not just me, my family also is taken care of. There's a trust. And then there's this learning journey one goes through. Am I getting it right, or this probably is a movie influence?
No, it's true that, like trust is a basic binding force. Even in outside any organization, trust is the basic binding force. There is no doubt about it. And depending upon what's the mission or the role or the aim of the organization, that organization has to run that way. And that is why probably armed forces cannot function the way they function in any other way. Right, and it's a time-tested process. It's not that you're doing something new, right? Of course, there's a lot of changes with the time, with the way your socio-economic structure changes. There are changes in the armed forces also. It's not that armed forces is not something which is what they call a bio bubble nowadays. It's not that you're living in a bio bubble, right? Earlier, the bio bubble was even a little bit true also, because you were more secluded. But now, today, with the media and everything, everyone is. It's not that. You can keep them in a bio bubble, or so that influences the social economic structure today, or the way it is. It's influential. Like when we are growing up, we never saw so much in the media, right? About armed forces being this, that. Nowadays you see a lot more in terms of that. But probably happening on ground, I would say, what was happening. Actually, if you met someone earlier. Today, I don't know whether that time was better or this time is better, right? Actually, on the ground.
True.
Right? True. To respect uniform in your, advertisement or on TV shows or on this is a different story. But to do it on the ground, right? By citizens in the country to be grateful about the service. Like, I give you example, I traveled to US about 20 years back first time. And in that shop, when they give some certain discounts to armed forces people, And so we were talking, and this young girl said, "Are you from Air Force?" I said, "No, I'm from Indian Air Force." "Oh, you are from Indian Air Force." She gave me that discount. Right?
Yeah.
He said, "No matter which Air Force you belong to, we respect that you are from Air Force."
Yeah.
Right? So that's like walking the talk, right? And that discount is not as if you are doing a favor to someone. In fact, you feel good about it. So there's a lot of things which has happened good because of this, right? Because of this exposure, that what kind of job armed forces do day in, day out, and a lot of good things happen. And earlier also, similar kind of feelings were there. So this, I think, it is not you look for thanks or gratefulness from anybody. It's just that acknowledgement that this, like I was with a group of journalists 3-4 days back in a resort somewhere, and the kind of thing he said was that, armed forces, their job is to do this, so they are getting paid for that. So it's the job, you do it. So, but it's all right. It's a job. There's no doubt. And I joined armed forces also because it's a job and pays for my, living. But it doesn't remain a job once you go there, right? It doesn't remain a job. It becomes more than a job. It becomes more than an involved thing. Right? Where in this world you find that some youngster walk into your office, give me more work. Sir, I have only flown 15 sorties in this month, while this so-and-so has flown 17, I want to fly, right? Where somebody walks up, like when I was a youngster, I walked up to my flight commander. When I was flight commander, the youngsters would walk up to me, "Sir, I've flown less, I want to fly more." right? So if it was work, who goes to his boss and says, I want more work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think there what I found interesting, I completely agree with you. And what I found interesting is also while you have a bigger mission of protecting the country, bringing victory to the country, or unity, enabling unity and all that, as an individual, as a civilian or an armed forces soldier, ultimately it's about survival.
Yeah,
We
true.
all
Yeah,
are
true.
always working towards survival.
Yes, true.
Right? So, in some ways, it's sort of conflicting. Like, to your point, there's a mission and then there is a bigger cause. And the mission could result in you not being there itself.
Absolutely.
That's a different mindset itself, isn't it?
Yeah, mindset that you go into this firstly thinking that you will come out alive.
Yeah.
Right. Firstly,
Yeah.
you go with that premise.
Yeah.
Right. You don't go with that premise that you will not come out of alive with that, but you are willing, right, to do whatever is possible to make that mission happen, even if it includes your life.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. So conflict, when say survival, like they said, a good soldier is not the one who dies for his country, but make that another SOB die for his country.
Yeah.
Right. So in the sense that this is true that nobody wants to die. Right. But not willing to die, right, or not and not what I mean to say is that you want to live, right, but you are not ready to live at that cost, right? What's the cost of living, right? What's the cost of that life? For example, let's say today we hear so many things. Today, for example, let's say you can turn around, probably nobody will know if you are alone there. Let's say you are alone there, right, and they are facing someone, right, and you can turn around, whether in the aircraft, whether on a sea or whatever, or on a jungle, any you can turn around, nobody's watching you, right. So if you come back, in my opinion, you will die on your own cross,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
As is that life worth living after that? Life should be worth living also.
Yeah.
And if it's not worth living, it's better be achieving something if it is there,
Yeah.
right. So clinging on to life is one thing, right. Yes, and valuing that life, and that's what's exactly only a soldier knows what the value of life is more than anyone else, right. Although he clings less to it than most of us otherwise do,
Yeah.
right.
Part of your training also, like you were saying, like for example, you could still see the smoke, but you're taking off for your training, right? It's part of it I've seen. And when I was in HP, I had a mentor who was a ex-US Marshal, retired. I don't know the title. I think she was a captain. I don't know the title. But she was my mentor, Kathy Takayama. And she used to talk about, preparing for the worst.
Yeah.
Part of the training is also preparing for the worst, right?
Yeah, true.
Because you don't know what the worst
Can
it
be.
can be. And it could mean losing my most prestigious soldier,
Yeah.
right? And so that is not just in terms of your training, it is everything, your process, your tools, everything goes to the worst case scenario preparation, right? How has that changed from, Raj, who was 20 years younger, to Raj, who's come into the Air Force, and, everything is about, ye plan A hai, ye plan B hai, ye plan C hai. How has that changed you as a person?
Yeah, this worst case scenario now you mentioned, it's very interesting in the sense that about 14 years where I have been associated with LCA test flying, whenever you do a test point, test certain thing, this worst case scenario is always the last thing which you discuss or talk about. This is the worst what can happen. In case this system which we are testing it fails, this is what can happen, right? So you have a flow chart of saying this fails, whatever, and you come out of a worst case scenario and you judge risk, whether risk is manageable, doable, and the worst case, whether, like, worst case what can happen is that aircraft and pilot both are lost. That's the worst case for any. But those are not the test points which you're doing every day, right? But in otherwise also you have certain test points, where you test if that thing is yes, no, yes, no. So this worst case scenario is actually what's the whole flight testing when we discuss. When we have presentations by the designers, by the engineers, by test crew and other things, and people who are sitting, more wise people sitting there taking decisions whether to go ahead with or not, for important things you have. So there's this worst case scenario comes out very clearly. This is the worst that can happen to you. Right? And that worst case scenario, if it is manageable in the sense whether that risk is worth it or whether that thing is worth it, or you mitigate it, you make the worst little less worse, I would say, right? And this is something which comes down to your normal day-to-day things also, in the sense that you tend to differentiate between what is important, what is vital, right? And personally for me, it has been only about the vital. I said important things don't matter, right? Important things can take care of themselves sometime, it doesn't matter. And what is vital, that if you address that, right? Like when you're flying, if you have a failure, whatever failure is there, so what is vital in that failure? There are two or three actions which you have to do. Otherwise, you may make that worst case scenario even far worse.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yes. So that kind of analogy, that kind of critical thinking, or that kind of thing which comes down to you tend to differentiate between, in life also, in general, in relationships, whether this relationship is worth keeping.
Yeah.
Right? If it's worth keeping, then let's not worry about these things.
These small things.
Right?
Yeah.
Consider them vital.
Yeah.
If somebody violates that, then, you can take a decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it comes down to sticking to the vital things, because you don't have time for all the important things.
True.
And normally we get carried away by, tackling urgent and not so important things, while important is later and vital is usually very rarely we tend to discuss.
Yeah. I think going by the conversation itself, knowing your purpose, having seen death so closely, and having a better perspective of what is vital for you, and then the ability to plan and evaluate various risks and worst case scenarios to then say, these are what are really vital and what's the mitigation plan. That's a very holistic perspective as an individual itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know whether holistic or not, but that's the way you're grown up. You come to that stage in life where you tend to, and risk is, like if like this risk, understanding what is risk has helped me. The one person who writes this book, Fooled by Randomness, or Black Swan, or Anti-Fragile, or Skin in the Game. So risk is only risk if you go into the game unprepared, or thinking that you will win. Right? If somebody you play Russian roulette, for example, you have one bullet in this, and we alternately shoot each other. If you think that you will be the person alive, then you are taking a risk. Yeah. But if you are willing to pay your life for that game, there's no risk. Right? As long as you are willing to lose. If you're betting 100 rupees, right, with the hope that you will win 10,000, right, then there's a risk.
Yeah.
And you have already 5,000 debt which you want to pay by gambling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge risk which you're taking without realizing it. But if you have 100 rupees and you're playing and you say, 100 rupees chala bhi hai to koi baat, 100 rupees koi baat nahi, khel lete. If you're willing to lose that, there's no risk.
So worst case.
So it's a question of what you want to pay.
Yeah.
Right? So like you don't want to die, right? So there's a risk.
Yes.
Right? But if you're willing to die, there's no risk. Yeah. It's my life, I give it. So it's fine. Right? Yeah. So, but so risk is when you are not when there are, let's say, 10 outcomes of a thing, right? And out of 10, one probably is not acceptable to you, right? But you bet because thinking that those 9 will be there, probability less. But that's the wrong way of doing things, because if that 10 outcomes comes, that is not acceptable to you.
Yeah.
If you lose your 100 rupees, your debt will not be serviced. Probably you will be much more into the deeper water.
Yeah.
So risk is when you are not prepared for one of the outcomes of the process or the things which you are doing, Otherwise, if any outcome comes out of that and you are prepared for that and you are willing to pay the price for that, I don't think there's any risk.
True, true. Another thing I also realized as a pilot, and I might be wrong here, pardon my naivety throughout the conversation, because my knowledge is only from books and movies, I think, about pilots. So I think knowing your machine is as important as the rest of it, what we've talked about, right? Like every aspect of your machine.
Yeah.
And Ritu, sorry, Raj, I've seen you in the Book Up group. You know your machines really well.
Of course. You see, you may not know your wife well, acceptable. But, there's a second chance, right? Or even third chance. But if you don't know your machine well, there's no second chance. Right? And, it'll take a lot of motivation for a wife to kill you, but machine can kill you if you don't know her well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what I mean
interesting you call the machine her.
I
actually have this.
Like you call aircraft her.
Is it?
Like
yeah.
when you're flying two pilots, so you want to hand over controls to her, to other pilot, you say you got her.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So it's called her.
Okay.
It's called she.
Okay. For me, it is.
Yeah.
So I used to work in printers, right?
Yeah.
It was a he.
Okay.
And he never works. Sorry, I didn't mean to break your thoughts.
So it's called, the aircraft is referred as she.
Yeah.
Right? She's behaved this way. She did that, whatever. Yeah. Right? So you call her. So knowing your machine is very important. And believing in a machine is more important. Right? That, once again, quoting Richard Bach, I somehow read a lot of him, and as a pilot, he was also a Air Force pilot, and he's written books about most quite philosophical aspects also. So he says that as long as you believe in your machine, right, as long as you believe in it, and there is adverse condition, right, and both of you are fighting it together. Right. So in his books, he talks about it as more of a living being, that kind of romanticism, that kind of association you attach with the machine which you fly, and which is true, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone, like somebody who flies a Mirage 2000, he'll swear by it. Somebody flies Jaguar, or whatever you fly, you swear by it, and you are very loyal, or you are very what you can say, you believe in that machine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so many times when I'm going for important mission, for example, flight test or whatever, firing a weapon, something, I'll while you do externals, of the aircraft, I'll tap the weapon and say, listen, boss, it's you and me, please, do the needful.
Yeah.
Right. Come back after a good sortie. You once again do the external. I'll tap, somewhere at the jet close to jet pipe or the wing. Thank you, for being so nice today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if things didn't go nice, thank you for coming back along with me.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to and finally, I think it's not about the mechanics of flight as much. It's about what I would say the mechanics of flight, aerodynamics, and law of centrifugal forces is one aspect of the whole thing. Of course, you need to know that.
Yeah.
Like you can, but flying aircraft by the physics or only the aerodynamics of it is like raising children by the book. Which have written to raise children.
How to raise my children.
How to raise children. And they say that most of the people who write those books don't have children. Right? So, yes, you should know the physics or the aerodynamics or the everything of it.
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing. You need to have a very, very strong affinity, emotional connect with the machine which you fly. And most of the pilots who I think they treat is as good as a living being.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's the way you tend to grow up, because that's the way the whole thing is.
I remember my first job, I was telling you, was in Bharat Electronics, and I worked in that signal processing group, which does the chip design for signal processing, and they're used in your submarines.
Okay.
In the armed forces, in the Navy. And the Navy folks used to come. They knew the technicalities of every aspect to the dot.
Yeah.
Because that's how much you know your machine.
Yes.
Right?
for Navy, like for example, although I don't know much, but you are on that ship or on the submarine or that vessel or whatever is on the ship, and anything there, your life, the way my life depends on the aircraft, that life depends on there,
Yes.
right? You can't be in middle of the sea, and if something goes wrong, not know how to go about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's much more vulnerable.
Yeah. So true. So
Right.
true.
So you need to know that.
Yeah.
For that matter, for what they call, like in army, they say that like you should be able to put your gun together blindfolded,
Wow.
right? You should be able to dismantle it, and if it's dark, you should be able to put it together, right? So we have we have blindfold drills or checks in the cockpit where you close your eyes, you reach for a switch, you should be able to reach it correctly. Right, with the adjacent switches, there are 4 switches which are probably 1 centimeter apart, but you should be able to reach for the correct switch blindfolded. Right, so every week you do it, or fortnight we do it, in Scotland, where you say blindfold checks done. So you do so and so, you put your hand there, and this is there. This. So you need to know that well, because some situation may warrant you to go for that switch, and where you can't afford to take your eyes from where you are looking at.
Yeah.
Right. So those guys who came to, at that time when you were in BEL, those guys from Navy who came there. So that's the way. If the soldier has to know his weapon platform or the weapon backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting to see, while this was the first part of your journey as a pilot. And then you went into the LCA, the test pilot bit of it, where it is about prototypes. It's about production machines, which you're sort of testing for the first time, and you're testing it for the worst scenarios. There's a very small elite group of aviators worldwide who actually do these test pilot as a profession, and you're one of them. How did that transition happen from the Air Force to the test pilot with ADA?
Test pilot is part of Air Force, and I won't say elite group, I would say fortunate group. Right? So we're just some bunch of fortunate people who happen to be the right
But there are very few of them, isn't there?
Yeah, few of them, yes.
Worldwide also.
Yeah, true. Because it's an expensive thing to train people for test pilot course. I think it's one of the most expensive training course in the world, where you train, because flying is expensive.
Yeah.
And training in that flying part, different thing is expensive. So, and you don't have those many resources to train many people, and you volunteer for it. There's a selection process, and then you get selected, for which I did. The flying different type of aircraft was always a fascination for me, to fly different. And most of us who do test pilots course, the first thing if you ask them, they want to fly different type of aircraft. Right. So as a test pilot, you have the luxury or the privilege to fly different type of aircrafts. Usually, when you're in the normally if you fly one type of the aircraft, you convert to other. That's a different thing. But as a test pilot, you are allowed to fly different type of aircraft at the same time. Sometimes I've flown 3 aircrafts in one day. And probably 4 maybe sometimes at one odd time.
And that's the first time you're seeing that flight itself.
No. You are trained for that. Firstly, in the course, it's not that you just take any aircraft and fly. No, it's not that.
It's like
it's not to be a
Range Rover test.
It's not आज ये कार चला लिया आज वो कार. It's not that कि इस जहाज के चाबी देना आज ये चला रहे हैं. ऐसा नहीं है. So you got to train for that. You need to whichever aircraft you want to fly, you need to have ground schooling for that. That may be shorter for a test pilot, but you need to have proper schooling. And whatever they have taught you in the course, once again, you are supposed to, in that short schooling or the short ground schooling, you are supposed to know the important vital things, right, for that aircraft, so that you can fly it and bring it back, right? So, that's what you are trained for, to realize this is what is important. This is in this aircraft to learn, and that you learn, and then you fly. So the main motivation for me was to have to fly different aircraft, right? And once again, when at some point in time, when there's a National Flight Test Center at Bangalore, where the LCA flight testing is done, and 2004, I had, during my Air Force career, or whichever way, after having done my test pilot course, there was some time where, it was, I could have gone anywhere, any station as a flight safety officer or to AST as whatever, back here at test pilots, where the test pilot course is conducted, aircraft service and testing establishment. So fortunately, somehow I could get back. That's National Flight Test Center. There was that time the last Air Chief Marshal R.K.S. Paturia, who was boss here that time, and so he accepted my application or whatever volunteer thing for being here, and that's how 2004 I came here. And every test pilot's dream is to fly a prototype aircraft, right? To fly a prototype aircraft, and that was and 1997 was 1994 first time when I came for the test pilot course. During the selection, our chief test pilot was at that time, or there was Group Captain Ajit Agde, and there was a LCA model lying there in the Almira. And there are 4, 5 or 6 of us who has come for selection there. At that time I didn't get selected. Were standing there, and he said, "Fortunate among you will fly LCA." And out of those that time there was one Colonel Harish now, and there's now Air Vice Marshal AP Singh who was there, and there's one naval pilot Maulankar, myself, and there's one Air Marshal Vikram Singh who was at that time there as Colonel, I think. Right? Imagine of those people in that class, so many of us went to fly, LCA, and that's a dream come true for any test pilot to fly a prototype aircraft. That's where the essence of testing comes. So this prototype testing is required different mindset. It's like if in-service flight testing, when you test new equipment, the thing is like a commercial cinema. This is like an art cinema.
What an analogy.
So here you do something and somebody say, you have flown 2 sorties in 1 week. Yeah, right? What the hell is happening? I fly 7, minimum in a week. So you fly 1 sortie, you come back with 2 GB of whatever or data, and that data is analyzed, and you sit for next 1 year for next 1 day for analyzing and saying what next we should do. So it is a very, very involving process, and fortunately there were good people in National Flight Center, who could accommodate someone like me, who I don't have eye for detail, which is required for this kind of flying. And I have certain things where I can analyze things in a manner where I can come to a conclusion. I can conclude faster. Right? Given the right inputs. But to get the right inputs from those finer details, it's not my cup of tea. So it takes all kind of people to form that team. And there are people, flight test engineers, who were there to get those details. And there are some pilots also who were very detailed and thorough in their thing. I used to sit there, sometimes not pretending to be bored. And finally, when things come, I said, let's do it.
But that also means then, Raj, that when you're flying, whether it's as a Air Force pilot or the test pilot here, there are people always better than you.
Of course.
Right? It could be your enemy who's better than you.
Of course.
It could be your own.
So he'll get you.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a continuous learning process to get better and better and better.
You see, the learning never stops. Every flight is different. That's another best part of it. Every flight is different. And the people who are better than you, they inspire you to be like them.
Yeah.
I have come across people who are younger than me as test pilots or in Scotland. I said, I wish I was him, like a flight lieutenant. Right? He has so much of Josh. He has so much things. I was not so good. Of course, there are other type of examples also. It's not that.
Yeah.
But the people who are, and of course, my seniors who were there, right? Whom I looked up to, I should be like him when I'm in that position.
Because they really walk the talk.
Yeah, they walk the talk. So, and that's how it goes. And you need to acknowledge that this is not my cup of tea.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is not my cup of, details to, going to very, very fine details to end of it is not my cup of tea, but that is required.
So right? That's where teamwork also comes in, right?
Also, yeah.
Because when you're flying, you're actually testing the borderline cases which could happen, which could mean life or death for someone who's flying that machine.
Yeah. So Firstly, like main thing is trust. You know, the designer who has come, I always believe that he has come, whatever he has done his best to get it, right? And as a prima facie, I never doubted his intent, you know, and I was always willing to go along with the designer. And sometimes, you know, that's the best thing that can happen as a team, you know, where, and so the person who's coming to you to test this, if he knows that you believe in him, right, and you will take his word for getting airborne, right, I think he tends to do a more thorough job.
Yeah.
Right, rather than questioning him that why you done this, what is it. Initially, he may come with a little bit, you know, left because he is going to send me back in any case. You know, do this, and come back.
Yeah.
Right, but he says that whatever I say, he accepts.
Yeah.
Right, because I have done my job properly. Right, like I said, don't teach me test flying. So I don't try to teach designers designing. Yeah. Right, so or the engineers engineering. Yeah. Right, that's there. And if they have, like the way I do my job, if they do their job that way, you know, no, if they do their job that way, probably I should doubt them. The way I do my job, so they do a better job than me, right? So the way that they do their job, right? So if you trust them, they will come with a more thorough job. That's my opinion.
And is that from the foundation from Air Force that you've picked up, or is that like Ritu Raj by default is like
that's
that?
more, I think, more of my individual. Like in test flying, it's more, it's more of my individual analysis of how things I should do. You know, it's more of my how should I deal with certain things. Right. So many times, couple of times it happened when people came that we want to propose this for. To flight test, you know, the proposal of this is what we have done. Next, we propose this for flight test. They didn't expect me to say yes, right? And I said yes, and they said, okay, give us one more day. Let's make one more presentation and come back to you.
Yeah.
Right. So that way, I feel that to make other person responsible for his job. Rather than trying to do his job. Yes, there may be danger in it, but those dangers or those what you call are far less than the dividends it pays.
Yeah. You started off with how there's an individual self as a pilot, then there's a team persona as well, and I think that's what you're continuously talking over here as well in terms of how the two sort of come in balance,
complement each other,
right? Yeah. Taking a quick break from our conversation today, I wanted to quickly talk about our collaboration partner Hubhopper. This podcast was created on Hubhopper Studio. If you wish to start your own podcast for free, please visit www.hubhopperstudio.com. Hubhopper is India's leading podcast creation platform. Start your podcast with Hubhopper Studio and get your voice heard across platforms like Spotify, Gaana, Google Podcasts, Wink Music, and many more. Click on the link in the episode description or visit hubhopperstudio.com. Thank you, Hubhopper, for the collaboration. And now we go back to our conversation. And Ritu, in this whole process, when you're flying, there's pressure, there's unseen things, like, you know, some machine would have, some part of the whole flow would have broken off, or the weather would have changed, or something wrong. It must have happened several times.
It's not that scary.
No? I'm saying very filmy influence. I'm telling you.
You see, that things go wrong, but it's not that you go up and things go wrong. You know, sometimes they go wrong. Yes, sometimes they go wrong, and sometimes unexpected weather, sometimes unexpected things that they come. But otherwise, flying is something so involving that I always say that once you get airborne, you know, there's no other thought other than concentrating on that. There's no scope left, any kind of reserve left for you to think of anything else, right? So you get involved. And that's the most beautiful part of it, right? Even if you are worried about on ground or about something, you get airborne, it sorts out, right? You feel better, right? It's a lot of physical activity also. Most of the time you come back sweating, you know.
Yeah, you were
You,
telling me
you,
that,
you,
yeah.
you sweat a lot, right? While flying, especially with summer. Oh, it's
But आप तो बैठे हो बस इसको ऐसे
no.
खींच रहे हो. How
Firstly,
is
the cockpit is hot. Of course, the pressurization cuts in, right? But
Mm.
even then, the way you are maneuvering, it's like physical exercise. You know, if you have a maneuvering flight, so you sweat a lot, and especially I sweat a lot as a individual also. So, and it's a nice feeling. Sometimes in summers when you're strapping up, especially in places in north where it's humid,
Hot,
other thing,
yeah.
you come back and you dry up, you find those white sweat marks on your overall, and they always fascinated me. You know, when you see those white marks of sweat, dried salt, white salt on your overall. Oh my God, that's sometimes when the G suit comes, the anti-G suit which you wear,
Yeah.
and that was always very good feeling to have. Other than that little bit smell sometimes.
It also is about memories, right? Like, I feel life is all about experiences and
Yeah,
the
true.
memories you carry. And this journey that you've walked through is all about memories, right? Like, you flew some of the most first of its kind in India itself, right? Tell me how much of those sort of vein on who you are today.
Yeah, it's in the sense that doing this kind of thing, firstly, it relieves you from having getting irritated for smaller things in life. You say, yeah, वो कर लिया, but ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. This is okay, fine. Let's not worry about it. Somebody talks to you arrogantly in a shop or something like that. You say, ठीक है यार, कोई बात नहीं.
गुस्सा नहीं होता है.
ज़्यादा गुस्सा नहीं आता है. एक दो चीज़ों के लिए गुस्सा आता है मेरे को कभी रोड पे. Otherwise, I don't get much angry. Otherwise, angry in the sense that I say, okay, fine. You can't. It's difficult for me to be in a rage. Primarily because you have so much of contentment and satisfaction on what you have done, right? What you're doing, that you feel that this is okay. Let it be. Right? Probably the other person, if he evolves, he will be also something like that. Maybe he didn't have the chance to do certain things which give him so much of satisfaction or the kind of involvement. So it's fine, right? So it touches, yes, every profession, no matter which profession you are, it touches you personally, And those people who say there is nothing personal about it, I don't believe in that. I think everything is personal, right? Every flight is personal, right? Every relationship is personal. Everything you buy from shop is personal, right? So everything is personal. I don't believe in that thing that there's nothing personal about it. Even if, like my boss is saying that, you are not right, you're not right, you're not right, but nothing personal about it. I said, no, everything is personal about it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm the person whom you are talking about.
Yeah.
But that's fine, right? That's the way you believe. But I believe as a person, I need to improve now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And if you don't take things personally to heart, how do you do it?
One thing that still comes back to me in this conversation is these memories that you're talking about. It is associated with some feeling, like, you must have overcome fear, or you must have overcome, some major personal trait of yours in that experience. Are there some instances like that really came out as, I've seen, how I look at risks differently, or how I look at stress differently, or how I look at failure differently, or how I make decisions differently?
True, I got married that way.
That's an interesting topic.
I had a small incident in Ambala when I was, that incident, although aircraft was damaged a little bit, what happened, I said, listen, boss, this is not okay. You need to tell that girl, right? She may also say no, but that's fine, right? It's not worth not telling her. And I asked her, and she said, yes, that's a different story, right? So I'm saying that you realize the whole, gamut of it. Like I said, after that incident, it struck me that, listen, at least you should say it, right? You should tell her, right? If you feel that's okay, right? And that was small incident. It's an incident, but it shook me up a little bit because I thought that a lot of things could have gone wrong. Things didn't go wrong that much. And like you say, memories and things. If you that talk of mine, if you say that, I said life is full of. It's not about years or months or weeks. It's about the moments, right? And your life, let's say my 56 years, is those moments stung on a timeline of 56. The closer those moments are, right, better life or enriched life you have lived, right? If those moments are far away, right, and of course you can, if you have that mindset, probably you create those moments also, right? So that way, flying. I'm not only talking about where you had some incident or close unserviceability or kind of damage to the aircraft. Not only that, but even when you do certain sorties are etched in your mind, right? Like there's a inspection, the director of air staff inspection, right? Some of those sorties are etched in my mind for lifelong. I can replay them. They are so, like I must have flown more than 6,000, 7,000 sorties of flights. And I've flown LCA the maximum, by any test pilot, more than 650 flights. But out of those 650 flights, there are certain flights which are etched in my memory. They are there. This is what happened in that. This is what we did, right? And similarly, my operational career, in different place, and those moments are stuck, because something happened which touched you in so deep that with that depth of that, like a frequency, equalizer, you have that frequency. That frequency and the amplitude of that thing was such that you cannot. It can never it can never diminish, right? As long as your memory helps you and you don't, lose your memory. Those things will be there.
Sort of pivots you as well, right?
Yeah, it sort of pivots you, and it sort of tells you that, and it is not only you, but you have seen along with other people. That's the best part of it. You are in that part of that whole thing when you made those things happen. Individually, those people who were there at that time with you while you were there. So those people are also there in your life. And best part is that irrespective of the uniform. Like about flying part is that irrespective of the uniform which you wear, somebody may be in Europe, somebody US, but as a single seat pilot, you connect very quickly with each other.
Yeah.
Right, having interacted with so that makes you, because there is certain things which is very difficult to explain. Like once again, I will say, Richard Buck says it's very difficult for you to explain to your most beloved one, that this is how you feel. And there's a guy who has done that, who has felt that. So you relate to him, because you can't describe those feelings or what you have gone through in words. And there is no sympathy, or there's no there's only empathy with each other.
Yeah.
Commonality of that profession across the borders or continents or that way.
I want to slowly switch gear to the last segment here, Ritu. When you joined this test pilot journey, it's also about you knew your value and you were trying to build a contract which is respecting what you bring to the table and at the same time aligned with what you want to do the next 7-8 years going forward. How did you go about sort of defining, here's the value I bring, and thereby this is the price or this is a contract that I want to associate with, and thereby bring respect in the whole conversation as well?
Yeah, see, when 2010, when I left Air Force, some people told me that you have a career, why you want to leave other thing. But somehow I could not see myself as a very senior officer in Air Force. Because I thought I may not be the right person, even if I happen to reach there, And reaching there is not a simple thing or a thing. But that story apart. but myself didn't feel very inspired to be in those positions or doing those things. Not that means I felt that I may not measure up to that. So that's why I thought that it's time and to say, and flying was my mainstay. I thought as long as I fly, I'll never leave Air Force. And that I realized very young stage in my life, about 10, 12 years service. I was doing one course and they had a psychological survey. They asked, where do you see yourself in 20 years in the Air Force, something of that sort. In flight instructor school, I said, I don't see myself in Air Force.
You were very, yeah.
So they got really, my chief instructor came, he said, you can't write like this. You're supposed to be the best motivated guy on this. I said, but that's what I feel, right? Anyway, so 2010 when I retired, I was 45, and I thought, now every 5 years I'll do something different. I had a license to fly civil air, and I also knew if I joined civil air, probably I'll be doing the same thing for next 20 years till 65. It will be difficult to get out from there. So I wanted to explore something else, and that time ADA and Air Force, that time I was chief test pilot for National Flight Test Center. They said, why don't you stay back? As a civilian now, since and in these kind of things, continuity is very important. In these kind of long programs, expensive money, by being part of it, you can probably save some money, time, effort, and add value to whole thing, because it's not this time that 4, 5 years, 6 years what you have learned before 2004 till 2010. 2 years I was 3 years, 2 years I was out from there, but in that 5, 6 what you have learned, the continuity from basic stage, starting from basic prototype to this stage, that learning has a lot of value. And I knew that's where, in fact, I wrote a service paper that we should have continuity. And at that time, I have signed up with there's a private company, being a pilot, like being a chauffeur of a big man, and then they have given me some proposal of my pay and perks and whatever. And ADA said, you stay back. So I said, either you take me at 45 years, wherever in career your people are at 45 age, equivalent to whatever designation appointment they have, either equivalent to that. Or, no, this is a very thing about the government organization. If you are in so-and-so in this organization, you can be taken at this position only in that other organization. There's things laid down, whatever. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that was not acceptable to me. I said, this is not something which I don't, but you got to come up a little bit if you want me to do that, and you go. So as I said, but this is very difficult to do it, it will take long time, short time, we can work out a contract for that. So I said, yes, and there was one of boss of mine, Air Commodore Rohit Verma that time, and he was the person whom I consider as one of the, he believed in execution, and he executed flight test. And I think he has a very big contribution towards the way the things are today. And he was very forward looking, and he said, yes, this continuity is required, and you should, and he told me that you asked for a price, and you should ask for this, that. I said, fine, sir, let me see, right? So I said, this is my offer from this thing, and if you can match this, I can think of joining. It's very difficult for me to go back home and tell my wife that, I get paid whatever I was getting paid, and I take higher risk. And the pension, which like when I was in uniform, if something happened to me, my wife would have got full pension, right? If now something happens to me, my wife will get family pension, right? And I wouldn't have gone for this contract. And finally, it's credit to Aeronautical Development Agency and the people who did that. Within 1 month, I asked for 1 month. Listen, 1 month, if you can do it, otherwise I'll join there. And a lot of people thought that it's about money, right? But my main thing was that I have a skill set. I have a domain knowledge, and it has a value. I won't sell it cheap, right? I can do it for free, right? But I won't sell it cheap, right? Like, but there's one thing, famous letter of Abraham Lincoln to the headmistress or teacher of his son's school, where he says that, teach my son to put the highest price tag on his brain, but never to put a price tag on his heart. To sell his brain to the highest bidder, but never to put a price tag on his heart, right? So on my heart, there was no price tag. You hire me, I'll never shy away from anything. Yeah. Whatever you want me to do, day and night, I'll never say my contract says this, or this is very high risk, I will not do it. That's my heart. But as far as my brain is concerned, you got to pay for it, right?
Because there's years of work that's
gone in. Or that years of work has been because I have not paid for that. I have got it, whatever. But now it's a commercial transaction, and the what you call the commercial part of it and the work part of it are two separate things. Okay, for your work you need to be paid, and what you think, get paid. So in that sense, I said this. They said, how can you ask for this money? You're not getting even paid half of it. I said, I'm not asking you how you pay me it. Why are you not paying it? Why can I'm just saying this is the price. If you want, it's fine. If you don't want, let's not debate. Right? That's not open to debate. Right? So like I'm not asking why don't you pay. Don't ask me why I'm asking. It's fine, right? But somehow it whole thing worked out, and in fact, when I was going for my final signing the contract, the company people which I was to join, he rang me up. He said, "Michael, listen, I told you 1 month, and I told them that this is what ADS said, and if they I don't think it will happen, right? But since this is a thing, I've given them 1 month, so this is 1 month. Please, you give me for this time. If this happens, I'll go there because you may find another pilot, but they can't find someone like me, yeah, right?" So, and they rang up. They said, "Listen, this is where you." I said, "Listen, I'm going there. Finally, this thing. By evening, I'll tell you. I'll sign the contract and this thing." He said, "We'll pay you 10% more, what we have agreed." I said, "Oh, it's not about that, right? It's the question that I want to do that. I told you earlier also.
It's the purpose."
So I thought that. So it was an amazing thing. I had to worry about my insurance.
Yeah.
Nobody was ready to insure me for this because they has not done insurance. I took 2 insurances, paid by bomb for those insurances, and I didn't know what the underwriting. One company, I think it was Religer Invesco, they withdrew their insurance after 1 year, realizing what they have undersigned. And then I went for other company. The HDFC, they gave me that insurance. My brother's friend who was there. They gave me that insurance, and I told my wife that, listen, if something happens, and because they will say we didn't know this clause, how insurance companies are. I said, if they don't pay, right, you just go to somebody, these are the people you go, or you go to TV channel. Listen, my husband died flying LCA, and they are not paying. They will pay. They won't risk that, right? So anyway, so that was interesting thing as a civilian. Where in the same office I was as a chief test pilot, when I joined after 1 month, there was somebody who was 3 years younger to me, a junior to me. He was chief test pilot, and he was sitting, and I didn't have an office. Earlier I had an office, right? And one very good thing happened at that time that I used to have earlier car. There's a car used to come and pick and for the office drop. And I said, do I need to buy a second car? So I had my son's cycle was there, started going on cycle initially, and then. So 50%, that cycling thing also started from there. That's a very, and later on, other officers also started coming on cycling who were living nearby, and to be without any title, where you have grown up in a system where if whatever you were was shown on your shoulder.
Yeah.
You wore those ranks. There were no ranks on my shoulder, right? And I had this LCA or wing or whatever, and this on my overall, and I didn't have a uniform. Right, either I have pant and shirt or overall. Yeah. Otherwise, it was overall in uniform. Right. To reconcile to it, what I think it's Robin Sharma, the leader without title or whatever. So that to be there in that situation where you had formal authority, where you were part of formal hierarchy, and then you are all of a sudden lowest in the hierarchy as far as the employee is concerned. Right. As for the employee of the ADA or HL comes, they have a hierarchy. The lowest employee as an employee was higher than you.
Yeah.
Right. And 50% of people thought, in case I am doing for the money, so they looked at me as somebody who's money minded. Right. I don't fault them. I think it's good that they thought I'm doing it for money and I can get it. Right. So some people in aeronautical defense thought that now since they are paying me this, so I should be more loyal to them than the Air Force, right? And but the good fallout of that, the best fallout of that was that the people who were there as civilian in HAL and other test pilots who were there, and there was very senior test pilot at that time in HAL, whom I talked to of joining HAL also at that time. And I told him, I said, you got to do something about this pay and perks. Because I may join, but who else will join? Everybody will do a license, go to civil air, right? You got to stop that, right? So what happened that this was a quantum jump. So everybody thought, yeah, listen, this youngster is getting paid more than you, whatever. So they did something, right? And they put up thing. So the overall pay and allowances of the test crew increased. And they put value on the flight test fraternity, right? So that's something that was very, very good fallout, and which is still because of that jump. I won't say I was instrumental in that. I was just in the right place at the right time to demand it and to get it. Right. So the fallout of that today, it's quite a few who want to do test flying. It's possible for them not to look at civil air and join the civilians as a test pilot. So that's something which so you need to put value on yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that value without ranks or anything, when I'm there sitting in that same organization, right, I should look left, look right, and sometimes I used to feel really, really, really bad, in the sense that, what have you done? You need not go through this, right? Sometimes it was a little bit humiliating, in the sense that to go and sign, because I was a consultant, register as a consultant, which is a procedure. I'm not saying I felt a little bit, for my pay, to receive my pay, I had to sign that I have
received this amount.
No. I have worked this month. Right? A certificate is to be signed by my boss that time to that he has been present for so many days and this thing, other thing. So sometimes felt little bit. Then I said myself, listen, you have value, which is valued in first place.
Yeah.
Right. So this important, what you feel is important, is actually not important.
Yeah.
Right. And that way, I must be very, very. I would say happy that, whether Air Force organization which was there at National Flight Tensor, whether ADA, whether HAL, right? I had a fantastic time as, with no portfolio, nothing. Later on, I was once again told to be chief test pilot, and other things. So this is something which reaffirmed my faith in the thing that these titles, these corner office, this thing is, it has a place.
Yeah.
But it is not the thing to show your value or to show your worth, right? If you can show your real worth without that, right, that's a much better option in any organization.
Yeah. It's for me, what I'm taking away is as a test pilot, it's both rewarding as well as challenging.
Yeah.
It is thrilling, but it is risky.
Yeah.
And risky. And so if you don't know your value and you're going and positioning yourself, and every profession will have something like this that is, rewarding and challenging, thrilling and risky as well. So it's very important to sort of identify what you bring to the table. And thereby set that as a context and settle that, because if that's not settled, then you're not bringing your best every time either. So it's always there in your head. It's as leaders, it's very important to understand the value perspective. And as individuals, it's very important to understand what is the value I bring to that particular organization. Right? Thank you so much for that conversation. So the last leg that Ritu I wanted to bring was around changing careers, right? Like, although you've been in that aviation space, you've been rediscovering yourself. And I remember you telling me about this Bantu and Bubbly dialogue. It's sort of, and I can relate with it because every 4 years, 5 years, I've gone through a rediscovery. Well, was I good at each role? I don't think so. But have I learned a lot? Absolutely learned a lot. So tell me your journey, because now you're in SAB.
Yeah.
Right? In SAB, where you're actually doing business development after being a flight in the Air Force as a pilot, then LCA test pilot, to now, a business development for SAB, where there's a lot of transformation that's happening from a technology perspective in this space. But you're rediscovering yourself in this journey as well.
Yeah, this I like that like the dialogue I said that in Bunty and Bubbly way. The movie starts with कि, some people do same कुछ लोग एक ही काम सारी जिंदगी करते हैं, कुछ लोग एक जिंदगी में सारे काम करते हैं. So that dialogue, I like that dialogue. And when I left at 45, I thought every 5 years I'll do something different, if possible. Right?
You knew that.
I thought that I'll do. Right? And first thing was this, although it was same job, what do you call, as far as getting airborne and landing was concerned, is the same. But on the ground it was quite different. Right? Getting used to of certain things were quite, I didn't have a, what do you call, place to sit for first 2 months in the same building. And I didn't have an iCard to come in and go out. I used to just wear my overall, so they didn't stop at the gate and overall and you go. So it was a different experience altogether, and it was very humbling. In the sense that I think that was a great thing for me to realize that one day, all of a sudden, it's like retiring and being no one, and just being value for the skill or knowledge which you have, which was a very positive part of it. Not to have any formal authority or appointment, but to be valued for your skill and your knowledge was probably it compensated. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to survive. Yeah. And when I was, and that's a greed which took over. At 50, I thought I'll try to do something else, but I pressed on. And then what was that I thought the way I was doing things and the way I was flying, probably in another 2-3 years, I may not be able to do the same kind of flying. I could feel a little bit of, not fatigue, but somewhere slow, which I thought earlier I could handle so easily. It took me, so as age or whatever. So I thought, okay, I may not be do all kind of flying. And on contract, I didn't have choice to say, I'll fly this, I'll not fly that. Probably if I were chief test pilot or in charge, or I say, no, this you fly. Right. So I told my bosses in ADA and Air Force that, listen, I would like to leave. And this is something which is, I feel, rather leave now than 2-3 years later where I'll be much older and this thing. And to some, they said, you continue, don't fly. I said, no, that's not possible. I said, tomorrow a youngster will say, why are you paying this guy when he's not flying? I said, that's for us to answer, not for you. I said, then why you should be defensive because of me? Right? And if I was a youngster, I would have asked.
Yeah.
Right. So why should, and it's a good time to go. We are very close to certifying this aircraft, and I think I have paid back what have been paid me. And so agreed. And then once again, I was thinking of joining airline, what to do. I was trying to look around for various things to do something on my own of consultancy. I've spoken to a few people. There are a couple of my friends who have got very good startups here in aerospace knowledge to join them. Right. And of course, like life insurance, my airline license was there, to go, and I had signed up also, within one of the airline, and I thought I'll join 2-3 months later and I had never ever in my life earlier thought that I'll work for a company like this. But during Aero India 2017, when I was leaving, there was one senior of mine, Group Captain Sudhir Verma, who was there in Saab, right? And we have been good friends. He was my instructor when I was as a cadet, and thereafter we served together in Kalaikunda and in Ambala. When I was commanding officer, he was chief operation officer. So he said, yes, this is something which, and they wanted to open an office in Bangalore. They asked me. And then I said, this is something which is different, right? And this is something which I always thought of, that lesser mortals do it.
People like us.
People like die-hard soldiers don't,
Civilians.
Do business. No, it's not about it. We don't do business. Business is not a, in my eyes, not as something which, and, arms dealer, middlemen, all those things come into your mind. I discussed with my younger brother also and other things. And I said, let's see, till now, fortunate in life that whatever I wanted, I always got it. And this is something which, at that time I didn't know what I want, right? But although I knew what I don't want, right? Yeah. And this thing came up, which was not one of the, in my list, but I said, let's do this. let's see what is there. And Sweden as a country is a small country. Saab as a company, they make from fighter aircraft to submarines, everything.
Oh,
and,
I
and,
didn't know
and
that.
and state of the art things, and they are doing business in all over the world, right? So I said they have certain, in technology sense, they have certain technologies which we aspire for, or look for. So let me see if I can be. That was a, I'd say idealistic dream. That let me see if you can be part of some technology coming here in real sense, real capability, not just buying on off. And in everywhere, you require people who are, I think, trustworthy, right? And I thought I am, right, in terms of that. And of course, working for, we have heard of diversity. I think working for a company like this, I have worked with American companies, Israelis companies during as a test pilot. And when I spoke to these guys, these guys sounded a little bit different when I talked to them. Right. Initially, initial part, there was not much, and it has been a very good, amazing experience for me to see what cash flow means, how the business is done, how you decide decision making process that whether to do this business or not. Right. It's a long haul business. It's business happens 2 years, 3 years on a prospect, and how you and Saab as a company, how you treat your employees. That concept of equality and diversity, which we pay lip service to most of the time, right? To see that actually happening, so it's been a very good. I would say, I would have been deprived of something had I not done this. In terms of thing, yes, business is important, and that's the only thing you are there for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But today, wherever you're doing business, it's not that if you know someone, you can say, "Don't take this and buy this." It's not possible. You have to qualify. You have to go there. There's evaluation. There's a commercial evaluation, and the works, the procedures are there. There's no shortcut to it. But yes, when you're sitting across the table from someone, when you say this is it, if that guy believes you, that is more important.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said, and my younger brother said, there's a dearth of good people everywhere. Don't worry. You're a good person. You will survive.
I also think it's that learner in you who, that must have been a big part of it, right? Like,
yeah, to see something unknown, to explore
right?
something, to see that thing, and it's been despite all the shortcomings and other things of it, I think it's been a good experience for me to see this side of it, business, profit, bottom line, how across the continent, the way some people, when I talk about the way they do business, let's say in Europe, that's the way you want to do business here, right? But that's not the way to do business here.
It's very different in India.
It's very different altogether. The customer is different, the requirements, everything's different.
Yeah.
So you can't have the set template. Yeah. So to have a really company which has so much place and other things, and to work with those people, and whenever I travel to Sweden to go there, I never felt that I have come from outside. Right, I'm the only person. Yes, at times, like they say that you don't understand diversity till time you are the only one person in that room who speaks that language and who eats that food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You really don't get the diversity till that time.
Wow.
Right.
Yes.
So that's when I understood what diversity is. Right. There are 4 or 5 people who are like me. And of course, English is something very. It's like a common language there in Sweden. Swedish, of course, is there. So that way, it's not been that. But yes, I think it's a very, very good at this stage in life to know different living, and the way we have the work atmosphere, the equality of as an employee, like lowest employee and the highest employee, equality of that concept. Right? It's been a good learning for me in the sense that overall, I don't know whether I have done good business or not, but I have done good for myself and good for for my company in terms of aligning with their views and values, and
And actually, you're building perspectives, right? Different perspectives, right? From where you started to this, it's a completely different perspective itself,
yeah.
right? Whether it is the company culture, how things are done,
corporate,
the bureaucracies or the org structure, everything is different, right? So
and a 25-year-old calling you like by first name, which was a which was a little bit at 55, you 53, 54, you feel that somebody is calling you, but 25-year-old calling you by name, and not in Sweden. Here we have an office among I'm saying among the Indian.
True.
So that way it's and I said, but why not? So getting used to it, adaptability, and whatever you call it, adjustment. So it's been it means great journey and great learning.
How is your perspective of money changing in this whole thing? What's your perspective, first of all, of money?
Money, I think, is a very important thing, in the sense that this again I heard somewhere in TV that people who say that money is not important usually have lots of it, right? So you ask someone. So money and there's this book, thinking fast, thinking slow, and other books also. They talk about money, where they say that money is the most important thing when you're on the bottom side of the line, right? When you have no money, money is the most important thing. When you start slowly having it, it's like the question of diminishing returns. Beyond a certain value, it loses that value. Let's say from 0 income to 10,000 income, it's let's say if you put
It's like a survival pattern.
like money on x-axis and happiness on right axis. Right? So money, if you go, the happiness on the left side, with money, happiness will grow like this. And finally, it'll taper down somewhere. Right? So you need to have minimum, I think, to hold your dignity. Right? Your dignity should not be compromised because you don't have the money. Right? You may not have many things in life. And that's something which I learned, like my parents when I was growing up. My mother never complained about lack of money, right? We didn't have money, but I never seen her complaining about lack of money, right? So and there's, I forget the Swedish word for that, how much is enough? There's once again a book, right? How much is enough? So beyond a certain limit, you need to have that kind of minimum money, I think, where you can hold your dignity. Right, where you can do things which you want to do for your family. Of course, not sending, not to pay for everything. It's not that you need to have a most expensive car or other thing. But yes, certain amount of money is required. If you don't have that money, it's difficult to be happy, right? It's very difficult to be happy in poverty, right? It's not impossible, but but if out of choice, if you live a frugal life, that's a different story. But if you're forced to live in poverty, it's awfully hard, right? So that was one more aspect of mine, that I wanted to be. I put a target to myself. Like when I'm in Air Force till 45, you have that income. That is good. It didn't stop me from doing anything. So of course, I couldn't think of sending my children to most expensive school, but I could afford a very good school. But fortunately, Kendriya Vidyalayas, where I studied, were there, and my children studied there, right? So they are almost fine. So I'm saying that I bought my car after I had 2 kids, right? I still had two-wheeler. But that's fine, But I could live with dignity, and my dignity was never compromised. And I didn't feel that, Yes, it pinched sometimes that if you had extra, but that was fine. Nobody has enough. So, but now there was one more aim of mine, that to be financially secure in next 10 years. 55 is the target I gave myself. If I live to that at 45, at 55 I shouldn't be working for money, right? That was a long-term target goal. And it was not that I should have 10 crore, 15 crore, 2 crore or what. I said I should feel financially secure, right? I should not feel the need of earning a living, right? And I should be able to discharge my responsibilities as Indian parents, what we have, marriage, thinking your support your children comfortably. Of course, the pension from the armed forces is a very, very big factor in that. Right, because my running expense for myself and my wife, I don't think will exceed ever that, the way we have been used to of living, no matter how much we have. So that way, I think, like my famous this thing is that if there is a God, He has been on my side, despite my very strong doubt about His existence. So and people have been kind, and life has been good. So but I know people who have worked much harder, much sincerely, and they didn't get. So it's not that hard work, sincerity, dedication, or ability will. Without that, you can't get there. That's a different thing. But it's not that with that you are sure to get there. You need to have some luck, some other people supporting you in life, some other coming to your rescue when you actually need it. So that has happened to me, whether people or other people, they have come to my support or when I needed things. So things have fallen in place, So yes, coming back to you, money is, I think, when you don't have it, is the most important thing. But once you have, you need to decide how much is enough, and chasing that is important when you don't have it. But certain limits is an exercise. It's like running on treadmill. You just keep increasing the speed of treadmill without getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So that way. But before that, when you don't have it, you're running on ground. You're covering distance.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So once you've covered certain distance,
yes.
You need not worry about distance. You need to worry about now concentrating on running and concentrating on seeing places and other things, not just focused on what you want to do.
And I think it's also very important. One of the things you're talking about is that whole notion of borrowing, right? Like borrowing money from somebody. It's to your point about dignity. It's the most difficult thing to do, to borrow.
Like they say, employer holds your job, but a lender holds your dignity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if what my boss can do, he can fire me. Right? But what a bank, whom I owe money, and if I can't pay back, he can humiliate me to an extent where he can ask me to vacate my house.
Yeah.
He can sell my belongings to recover that. So that way, and money is the hardest thing to ask.
Yes.
From someone.
Anybody.
I can ask you for a car, give me your car. I will stay in your house for 2 months, for example, if we are good friends, right? But if I say, give me money to eat or whatever, it's very difficult. I can ask your car. You may not mind if I burn, 500 rupees of petrol per day, for example, for 3 days when I stay with you. But I can't ask you for, give me 1,500 to fill petrol.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing to ask. And I think that's one thing which culturally we are slightly, we avoid this topic in talking about money. We feel it's not to be talked about, the importance of money. And most of people say, nahi, paisa zaruri nahi hai, wo nahi hai. It's fine. If you have it, it's fine. Yes, it's zaruri nahi hai. Lekin agar nahi hai, to zaruri hai.
Ritu Raj, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I had a lovely conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah, I did.
This was insightful, whether it is about how one should run an organization, how do you set a mission statement, as an employee joining an organization, how do you align to that mission statement? You either fit in or you don't fit in, and it all comes down from there to the culture that you build, teamwork, risk, as well as the whole perspective of changing careers and money. I've learned so much today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks a lot.
Thank
and
you.
I thought, when you told me that it's going to be R+, I thought, oh my God, it's going to be tough, but it's been very easy talking to you. Thanks. Thank you so much for being, a good conversationalist and making me talk. Thank you.
No, I learned from these conversations. So for me, I chose this as a mechanism as against interview, because it allows me to go deeper into a subject, learn more, understand. Like today, I really wanted to understand, how does the army or the air force or the armed forces have a culture where people are ready to give their life for a mission? And I think that's one of the big takeaways of, how that culture is built. And also that whole phrase that once a soldier, always a soldier. And I see why it's once a soldier is always a soldier, because it's so engraved in us once you're through that system. And I think hats off to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.